All right, you are now tuned in to the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Lee Velez. I am here with Goose, Manny, and Gabe. This is titled Millennials. In this episode, the crew dives into an array of interesting hot topics. We discuss being a millennial, technology, education, and society. We talk about how we grew up, our views, and our overall approach on life as a millennial. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Audie Cornish and Kabir Sehgal. All right, so if you're new, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. As you can tell, we are all here are millennials. So we are going to dive into the, quote, hot topic. It's just, to me, basically a buzzword. So I like to define things. I'm just going to go through the last, 4 generations, that are actually still living. So the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. But it's weird because these numbers kind of get argued over when the actual clear dates are. Generation Y/Millennium, born between 1981, which also has an asterisk, to 2000, but you also hear into the mid-2000s, and you also hear from 1980 to mid-2000s. And then Generation Z/Boomlets, born after 2001. Again, that's, for some reason, there's no definitive things. If you look it up, just look up a generation and go to 5 different websites, you're probably going to get 5 different numbers.
That's exciting. I never thought I was considered a millennial. I thought it was younger than maybe 90 and later.
Yeah. So there you have it. With that, we wanted to actually read a very interesting article that I found was interesting from shrm.org. It's titled "Labeling Millennials. Is it Misguided and Discriminatory?" So actually, we're gonna have Gabe read it since it's so long, and I know you guys get tired of listening to my voice. So.
Lazy, unfocused, demanding, overly dependent. If an HR manager caught you labeling all workers older than 50 this way, he or she would haul you aside for a chat on age discrimination. Yet these terms are frequently used in news articles, books, speeches, and yes, workplaces to characterize the entire generation known as millennials. It's become common at many companies to view millennials, born between 1980 and early 2000s, as requiring special attention and expertise. A whole industry of speakers and consultants has sprung up to advise employers on how to hire them, keep them, treat them, and handle them. Are millennials just typical young adults? Allison Green, author of the popular Ask a Manager blog, wrote in September 22, 2014, issue of the U.S. News and World Report, that most of the stereotypes people attribute to millennials are about what generations they happen to belong to. They're about being young and inexperienced in the work world, she wrote. This generation is far from the first group of 20-somethings to find entry-level work boring, not understand the concept of paying their professional dues, bridle at dress codes and office norms, or yearn to have more of a voice in office decision-making. In short, Green wrote, the traits and behaviors commonly attributed to millennials are about being inexperienced, not about being born between 1982 and 2004. Lindsay Pollock, a millennial workplace expert and author and spokeswoman for the Hartford Financial Services Group Incorporated, agreed that millennials are young, inexperienced employees who, like previous generations, have basic needs such as training and leadership development. The difference between millennials and younger workers of decades ago is what kind of training millennials want and need, when they need it, where and how it is delivered, and why, she said. For instance, millennials' behaviors and values often stem from their immersion in technology, she said. They grew up with computers, cell phones, the internet, and social media, expecting speedy responses to their questions and benefiting from instant interaction with friends and coworkers. This translates to a need for frequent and regular feedback from managers. Millennials are digital natives who value an educational experience such as field trip or online class, rather than traditional in-person training in a classroom setting, she said. Millennials have been coached and mentored their whole lives. That's why they value mentoring at work. Years of research from organizations, companies, and government agencies have shown that millennials are changing everything from our culture to the workplace. Companies will succeed when they meet the needs of this giant generation of 80 million people with an estimated spending power of $600 billion every year.
Boom.
All right, so obviously that was a little lengthy, but as we talked about, chopping this article up, I just figured let's just give them the whole thing, just because I thought there are some valid points in there, some some good ideas that brought something to the table that kind of like made me tilt my head. Actually, for some of the stuff that I never even thought about. So I do like how it started off. It's very interesting. I remember, one of my uncles trying to get a job basically in his 50s, and he faced age discrimination, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. That's basically what they're doing to the millennials. Yeah. First of all, let's just even go back on the whole labeling thing. And it's fine to label, a group of people, and that's what you are because of the definition, right? You're born from 1980 to early 2000s. Yeah, exactly. But that's where it ends. That's only where the definition should stop.
Yeah, shouldn't be a whole blanket statement.
Yeah, so now people are filling the the world with the basically blanket statements of an entire generation, and 95% of them are basically negative. What I find interesting is if you did it to the other generations, they would react in a much different way.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff is like, they say, like in the beginning of the article, it says, lazy, unfocused, demanding, overly dependent. The people who are defining that are people who aren't millennials. Mm-hmm. That's what drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And you also got to think, growing up, we had our hands in technologies. Wait till you see what the boomlets are going to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because we grew up in an era where we didn't necessarily always. Well, I grew up in 1985. Or I was born in 1985. So my brother and my youngest of three boys. So my brothers, by the time the one was already 5, there was already video games and stuff in my house. So I always had something electronic in our house. So with that being said, we operate differently. We see the world differently. We see it in through a lens of technology. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everything in technology is what? Faster, bigger, better. Absolutely. As technology increases, it's moving at such a fast pace. The biggest joke is like once you buy a computer, there's already a newer version out next week.
6 months, it's obsolete.
Yeah. So it's constantly boom, boom, boom. So it's like, that millennials are always seem to be bored with everything. But if that is how we grew up, is the toys that the generation before us bought us, exactly. Right? And created, then you complain about the product it developed. That's what drives me crazy. Yeah. Instead of trying to understand it and say, why do they act this way? Or why is it that when I grew up, X, Y, and Z? Okay, well, we grew up in 2 different eras where, what if it was flip-flop? What if I grew up in your era? See, the thing is, I can go back to your era to some extent. You can't come back into mine. Meaning, you can take away all my technologies, and I can obviously grow up how you grew up, right? Mm-hmm. I can't throw technology back into your childhood. Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
We also grew up in a transitional technology too. It was like
it wasn't that high end.
No,
like when it first started.
Well, even then, like we like us when we were younger didn't have the cell phones and stuff like this. Now,
right.
Like now, it's ubiquitous to everybody in the world has a cell phone. But we grew up in a time where that wasn't a thing. You had to manually call somebody on the phone or a pay phone.
Like we were late teens when I got my first cell phone. Some people might have it earlier, and before that,
I got it after I graduated high school.
Yeah, it was like pagers, and there's all other stuff. Like they had PDAs.
Oh yeah.
There was technology out there. It just wasn't. Now you got to think that the generation under us is not only getting those technologies at a much higher level of technology and at a younger age.
Yeah.
So it's even faster for them. That's what I'm saying. So what are we creating? We're the transition guys where our childhood was like we were outside.
Yeah.
Yes, we had the video games, but it wasn't as it is right now, where it's everything's a video game. Like your phone is everything, and then you go from one screen to looking up at your TV to then looking at your tablet, and then to even learning. They have online classes now. You're just staring at a computer screen. Mm-hmm. Although they're, when we get labeled, they're not understanding when you label that whole thing. We are also they try to say like millennials aren't contributing to society, which makes zero sense. That actually makes no sense. I mean, for someone to actually say that, so what are we, just not doing anything? You actually think we're not producing anything? You just got done saying we're spending $60 billion into this economy.
600 billion.
600 billion into this economy every year. So, and there's 80 million of us. So it's clear, just like off the bat, I just think that just as human beings, it might just be a natural thing to just point the finger. And even they have stories of, when my dad said, back in my days, I walked 20 miles. You kids have it easy. And it always goes from how hard they had it. Yeah. And that's what they're trying to tell us, how easy we have it. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking how easy my kid's going to have it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just every generation does it. They also do it with music. Oh, you kids listen to junk. We heard my mom say it. I mean, our parents say it. We heard their parents say it. Where I'm going to probably say it to when James is starting to listen to his own style of music. Oh, it's junk. You don't know. Yeah. It's just
yeah, exactly. But that too is like people stop at a certain age to stop accepting new things is what it is. And so music and stuff, you stop listening to new stuff, whatever, or stop accepting new technologies and stuff like that too, and just stuck in what they want to do. Also
stuck in their ways. I actually was just talking to a friend who was telling me that they got this new. There's a new. He's a C-suite leader. I don't know what his title is, but it's up there. So he came in. He was like late 20s. Like he's young, probably like 28, 29 years old. Came in and started implementing all this new changes for. The strategic plan is that it's for the better. But to outsiders or people who are just on their last 5 years there and they're going to retire are throwing the biggest fits ever.
Sure.
Because, they're in a comfort zone. They just want to go in, do their stuff. Well, now technology's changing. So if, they're trying to be the leaders in their industry, you have to stay on the cutting edge of all that kinds of stuff. So that's what this guy's doing. And obviously if he's in a, C-suite, let's pretty much agree that he got hired for a reason. Yeah. Second of all, he's not the only one calling all the shots. He definitely has like a support system. There's definitely a board of directors or something that this all has to go through who are not a millennial.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's checks and balances that has to go
Absolutely.
through.
It's not like the guy owns the company. He he's a C-level leader, which is huge. But the changes that he's making is making people uncomfortable.
Yeah, of course.
Because supposedly it's strategic.
But nobody likes change.
Yeah, nobody likes change.
But my friend was telling me the hardest part is the older group. They're having the hardest time with it. And that goes anytime you're doing that level of reorganizes, like when you reorg a company.
Restructures.
It doesn't matter whether it's high level or low level.
Right.
There's going to be, first of all, there's going to be, people shifted around. There's going to be people who aren't going to be working there for much longer, just naturally. And then there's some people who just are gonna go against the grain.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter what. And I just think when you have to put yourself in our shoes, right? Just like I feel like we're constantly forced or always trying to be constantly reminded of someone else's generation. Yeah. Like instead of letting our generation just live, you know what I mean? Let it produce what it's producing. We need your help just as much as you need our help, right? Somebody was just talking about Social Security. I'm like, all these people complaining, and they're talking about Social Security is not going to be non-existent for us, right? By the time millennials ready to retire, there's not going to be Social Security there for us. But we're still paying into the system that the older generation created that wasn't ever going to work. They knew it was going to fail, but just kept at it because they did. But then, we're looked at as lazy, or I don't even, the words, it makes no sense because I could see, are there people that way? Absolutely. But there's people that way in every generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I love the person who says something like that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, you're lazy. You're a lazy person. Like in the back of my mind, I'm like, what did you produce in life that was so like grand that you can place an entire judgment on an entire age group? That's what I actually am fascinated by the topic. I actually think it's great for discussion too. I'm not like a whiny, like I'm not complaining about it. I just think it's interesting. I always say it's interesting.
Or even like for the fact that we have such different technology available now, and there's much different opportunities. Like especially case in point, what we're doing now, like that wasn't a thing, whatever, 20, 30 years ago.
Right. This podcast itself wasn't a thing. So, it was like, we got a conversation with older relatives who say, oh, well, I worked hard when I was young. I was working hard. I'm like, what is to say that I'm not working hard? Who are you, unless you follow me and do it. Yeah. Just because it's different, they think it's not hard work. And there's kids my age who do hard, like physical labor. If that's what you're trying to define, the physical labor. But then meanwhile, where I'm using my brain for my work, right? I'm not saying he's not using your brain, but I'm saying that's where, it's a desk job.
Yeah.
But who's to say I'm not working hard? I'm busting my tail off day in and day out. If you came back and see what I did, I honestly believe whoever it is, whatever level you are and whatever background you have, would have an appreciation for what I do.
Absolutely.
And I think when you look at life in that lens, I think I can relate to the baby boomers. I can relate to Generation X, to a boomlet or whatever they're calling them.
I never
now.
heard that term before.
I never did.
I feel like I could relate to everybody if you actually sat in their shoes. Why do people? That's the same judgment saying, alcoholics are completely out of control people. Mm-hmm. They're the most selfish people you ever meet, right? If someone were to say that statement, it's like, okay, well, are you in their shoes? Like, you would probably understand why they do what they do because you're in their shoes. I'm not giving anybody an excuse, but you would at least have an appreciation. Exactly. You would understand it.
You don't know what their life is day to day.
Right. And how about this? How about instead of the complete critique, how about bringing it together and maybe show us something different? Or how can we close the gap? Because what you're teaching us is basically what we should be doing to the next generation, is basically like crush them and say, oh, no, you guys don't know anything. You're lazy. You don't get it. You're quickly bored. You have no dress code. You don't know what it's like to work hard. Right? That makes no sense. What kind of an example are you leading? Shouldn't you actually be like holding our hand and like chucking us forward? Not holding our hand as in like babying us, but I mean like they said, we've been mentored. I don't even know what that even means. We've been mentored our whole life. That doesn't make no sense. I had a parent. So,
exactly.
That makes no sense. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. Maybe somebody can explain that. Or maybe I just
mentored. I guess mentored. I read it as mentored as in you were exposed to a lot of things. The internet allows you to kind of culture yourself, or kind of have an evolution that prior generations didn't have. You can read about other cultures. You can read about other things. So it's easier to kind of get that perspective, even not having gone through it. Like the 1960s, when the space race was happening, it was a big deal, man.
Yeah.
Well, we can go back and just, Google it and actually act like we were there. And actually, it was probably better because there are all these interviews now and all these biographies and stories and shows made, built around that premise where we probably have a more in-depth knowledge and understanding about what actually happened. Where the generations before lived through, I was like, oh, you see the spaceship go up? And they'd read it in the paper, and that was it. That's kind of where it ended.
Yeah.
So we are very fortunate in that sense. I think they're mad.
Yeah,
they're mad, and they're very, in my opinion, baby boomers are very comfortable.
Yeah.
They were used to having mom at home, dad go to work, one car, go to school. It was a different kind of, this is how I grew up. And when you grow up, right, that was the best because you associate, being young. Most people, the good old days. So they see us now running around. Back then they would try to master whatever job they did because they wanted to be there for 20 years and get a pension.
Right.
Now, millennials are like, man, 5 and I'm out, man. I need to try something new, something different to keep me going.
Right.
And they can't understand that. Right. And I feel like they're just so black and white about it. It's like, listen, maybe you don't understand me. It's not me not understanding what hard work. You don't understand me. And if you don't change, I'm not going to be like, hey, let's talk about it. Because who wants to talk to somebody who doesn't want to be open and have dialogue about it?
Exactly.
They're just like, nah, you don't know what it's like. And then they turn away. They're like, all right, well, I get mad at you. I resent you. Because like, all right, well, I don't know then.
Because you're not willing to understand.
Right. There's not an open dialogue to kind of understand one another. Because a lot of that, my parents, my dad, they're very just black and white.
Yeah.
Nah, you don't know what it's like to work hard. That's it. That's all you're gonna give me. That's it. That was
with no explanation.
Yeah, with no explanation.
There's a lot that we have our hands at being exposed to, and I actually think the generation behind us, I think they're going to be even better at it because we're their parents or their older siblings or whatever, and we can basically guide them. It's like, oh, dude, just do X, Y, and Z. I feel like the shift is not going to be such that transition where it was from the baby boomers to Generation X. I think we're going to be more likely to guide the next generation just because we understand. I just think we're more open because of everything that we are exposed to just with the internet alone. The stuff that we have access to, how we even make money today is totally different. How we even get paid is different. Are we lazy because we got direct deposit to our bank account, or because you want us to physically get a check and run to the bank before closing hours and cash it, and then that's hard work. Yeah. Well, it's a technology that you created that we're taking advantage of, and we're using it. We're utilizing it. We're exposing it. We're seeing more. We're socializing more in a different way. Oh, they closed off. Okay, really? Because we're on social media all day long, every day, communicating and connecting with people around the world. Something you didn't do. Or you at least didn't have the opportunity to. It's just that it's different. It's not that we're closed off and we don't communicate. Oh, whatever happened to blah, blah, blah. This is the world we're living in. Whether you made it, whether I made it, or I don't know who made it. It's just that's the reality of it. I don't know where you go from that when it comes to an understanding point. How do you not see something and say, yeah, times have changed? For generations since the earth has begun, times have changed. Sure. And you have to be, and I'm not saying huge paradigm shifts. We just so happen to live in one. Yeah. The last 150 years have gone so fast with progressive change. When you talk about going from even electricity to, so the generation before that is like, oh, you don't know what it's like because we had to use candles. Yeah. And then when the car came, so that generation before that is like, you don't know what it's like because we had to use horses. Yeah. Right? And then now I don't know what it's like because we had to drive everywhere, and if we didn't drive, we took a boat and we took a ferry. Now you have airplanes.
What's the difference?
It's transportation. It's always faster.
It is. No, but what's the difference?
And what?
As far as those levels of change, they can understand those changes are simple. Technology is almost too advanced. Like those are basic things. You have for a car, you have a gas to go,
life changers,
and a brake to stop, right?
Yeah.
So let's just think that's basic. You talk about technology now. I'm a millennial. I don't get on all the gram, the book, and all that.
Right.
I know I probably should, and shame on me if it leaves me in the dust and I get lost. That's my fault. But it's hard to grasp all these different. A phone is difficult. It is a lot of moving parts. You got apps. You say, oh, well, go to your settings and check this app out. They're just used to text, maybe a text and a phone call. So we move so quickly, and it's intricate. So the technology is a lot more vast. Where there was just like those changes were simple. They were black and white. You have a refrigerator. Plug it in. Guess what? Your food's cold.
Yeah, because that was just a change of a certain type of thing. It was whatever. This is a change of lifestyle, essentially.
I mean, even in the baby boomers, I think it was as early as or as late as maybe even 30s. Maybe this is something I need to look up. But refrigerators were small back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And also, they didn't shop for the next 2 weeks. They shop for the next day or two. Yeah, sometimes it's just for that day. Right. We're talking about under 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It's within 100 years this was happening. Now we shop, me and my wife shop literally every 2 weeks. Right. I mean, obviously we go, on weekends if we have, something going on, we add to what we need, and obviously you have to replenish milk and, water and stuff like that. But
so for them, right, they to me they look at laziness, right? But when it was a benefit to them, it was convenient. Now all of a sudden we're lazy. Well, your convenience is the same thing. Your convenience is now my laziness. I don't understand.
I just think we're getting more efficient on
exactly.
We're just getting more efficient. Yeah. It's the same thing. Even like 30 years ago, you didn't go to the grocery store and buy a bottle of water. Are you now saying, oh, that's lazy? You should have just drank out of the fluoride water that's coming. Sometimes stuff is just better, and you just have to agree with it. Yeah, right. Having this is just better. You know what I mean?
Became buying bottled water was like a joke when it
I remember one time it came in. I saw it in a can. You bought almost like like a soda can, a pop. And it was water in it. I guess they're just trying new things out to see what was more attractive. Obviously, the plastic bottle stuck. And maybe, who knows, in 10 years, that's nothing. No. There's something in this room right now that we're using that in 10 years is going to be completely obsolete. I don't know what it is.
Our brains.
Yeah. Way to add to the conversation. I just honestly think we are becoming a more efficient specimen. I just think all around, even like when it comes to health, we're living longer. Yeah. We're lasting longer. Our teeth are whiter. Anyway, in health in general, it's improved. You can see like the kids nowadays almost even look bigger and better than we were. I'm like, holy smokes, that's an 8th grader? You know what I mean? The kid looks like a grown man. And just healthier. Like you look at a 30-year-old today. I was looking at mugshots from like I was like watching a documentary on like the mafia back in the 20s. I was looking at like a mugshot from like Al Capone. I'm looking at the thing. The dude was like 33 years old. He looked like he was 55. And everyone looks so aged then. I mean, you're even talking about, I remember hearing stories from like my grandmoms and stuff, and older relatives talking about how they cured stuff. You know, when a baby was crying or whatever, like you would give them alcohol or whatever, like vodka for this and rum for that. That's how they were dealing with their issues, right? When now we have a medicine or something else to handle those things, those ailments, right? Yeah. And so we're becoming a healthier human being. Are now we just mad about that too? And I think you there's some level of truth to what you're saying when you said you think they're mad. I mean, again, it was a blanket statement. We're like doing back to them what we did, they're doing to us. Exactly. But I do think there's that level of like, but I don't have that feeling for my son or like that generation.
Well, that's what I mean, right?
I don't feel like, oh, they're gonna have it so much better. I'm excited to see what's gonna be created. Actually, I'm like, I want to do it with you as long as I'm here. That's
it. You just touched on it. That's why you're excited for it, because I want to do it with you. I don't want to live in the day of a laptop. Now they're tablets, right? You don't want to just stay sedentary. You're not staying in your spot. You're going to evolve with him, and that's what I feel a lot of people, in that generation didn't want to evolve because it got too much for them. Right. You know what I mean? They were mad when computers came out, when machines came out. Why? Well, they're taking our jobs. I don't want, there's some sort of resentment there that we got more efficient, because it took away from them. So I don't know. That's just.
I do think like they're becoming like replaceable. And it's something that they have to deal with. It's like a truth that they're heading out right into retirement stages or later stages of their careers. Some of them already retired, obviously, and it's that thing in the back of your mind, like, holy crap, I'm easily replaced. But that goes for us though. Sure. But see, as a millennial, we know that already. Right. Somebody can replace me tomorrow, right? And you got to be on your toes with that. That's why we're trying to build. That's why we're hopping, from one experience to another. When they said, "Oh, they're job hopping and stuff," okay, well, you want us to have the experience.
The resentment from what used to be a guarantee to now
there's no guarantee.
20 years in a pension is no longer.
That's not the case anymore. No, absolutely. Also, we want to travel. When back then they weren't actually traveling; they just stood where they were. Now I can go to college and travel the world at the same time. Yeah, because I get a 4-year bachelor degree online. So as long as I have like a Wi-Fi connection, which in 10 years this is probably going to be a joke, but as long as I have a Wi-Fi connection, I can go anywhere around the world and get a 4-year degree for a fraction of the cost of going to the traditional college, the brick and mortar college that we got sucked into that whole thing, and dealing with it, which I have no regrets. But there's definitely other ways that are now available that I would think is, again, here we go, efficient. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you want to travel the world? I do feel though that college experience was something that you can't put a dollar sign on. You can't put. So for me anyway, I can only speak for myself. But I mean that's like a whole other topic. But just even looking at that from when I first started, entering into college, there wasn't many options, if any, to take entire degree online. Yeah, I think it came while we're in college and exiting out 10 years ago. Because it's been 10 years since I graduated from my bachelor's degree, right? You gotta think, so it's like add 4 years. You're almost talking about 15 years ago. Did they even offer like a bachelor degree online? I don't think so. They might have had you could have got like certificates and random classes. But now you could literally. Am I going to be mad? Oh, the next generation? Are you kidding me? I had to go to an actual classroom. No. I'm going to be like, dude, good for you. You know what? Do this, and this is what I learned. Do X, Y, and Z. Get something under your belt, and then, go after, whatever you think is your life's path. But I already see, because I guess we're just used to technology constantly changing. Yeah. So we're constantly changing. So we're constantly bored with stuff. That's why they said they get quickly bored. Yeah. Well, look at how we grew up. Like, this is what you're throwing at us. You know what I mean?
We're constantly giving you things to
the only person I could think who's a millennial, Zuckerberg, that created something that is within our era, that completely changes, that generations previous to us and generations before us are enjoying.
Yeah.
Connecting with family members you never connected with, and friends and long lost relatives and all that kinds of stuff.
And that's made like the whole point of class reunions almost obsolete, because now you know what everybody's doing now, when the point of that was to see, oh, what have you been doing for the past 10 years?
See, they only involved themselves when there was a benefit. It wasn't so they could educate themselves, like, oh man, this Facebook thing's cool because I can see, and it behooved them to do it. It was like, oh, I can get something out of it. But if something they have to learn that has to be through like an experience and they might be uncomfortable with, they're like, I'm out.
Right.
As for my experience. I mean, I can't say that for everybody. Obviously.
And that's just one of the main products, like a millennial, whatever, created. Imagine that, which literally completely changed the face of the earth, of how we ever communicate forever. Even if that were to shut down tomorrow, still the fact that that's all still in our memory brain, in our memory cells. What I was kind of like, to piggyback on Manny saying, it's a saying, you can't go and grab all the good stuff. You can't, what they say, like,
cherry pick?
Yeah, like cherry pick. Yeah, like you can't just grab the good stuff, right? And then complain about everything else. And that's what I feel like it's doing. And in the back of my mind, this whole argument is dumb. Like, even this topic, it just makes no sense to me, because I want to see other stuff. I want to talk, like, let's learn something else. It's quick, it's rapid. Here's the thing, me and my brothers, we always go back. We love the old school stuff. We like muscle cars. I love going back and watching. I love history. I was watching documentaries in the 1920s. I love that stuff. I like looking back and saying, oh man, they had it so hard. Phew, lucky them. You know what I'm saying? Or they had it easy. I can reverse this whole entire thing. Oh, well, you lived a simple life. My life is complicated. You forced technology on me. I had to do it if I lived in America. That's the way it is. Yeah. Couldn't I flip that entire argument, saying I was unfortunately born here, and now I have to deal with this. And meanwhile, you're telling me it's my fault for what I'm producing. Yeah. How does that even make sense? That's like, I can't say that to you. I can't say, you produced barely anything, dude. What were you guys doing? You produced a toaster in your era, right? That's a joke to us now, but back then that was a big deal. Actually, there's an article saying this is the greatest technology that would ever be built ever again.
Oh yeah, and then when the microwave came out, it was like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, so that, to me, that's why I'm so open, and the way technology has been, even just the last 10 years. You're so open to what's next. I'm like, yeah, literally anything's possible. Who knows what they're going to come out. It's going to be some virtual reality thing and some other third dimension of life that I'm in but not in, and living multiple lives. And like, so I see that already happening, and it's not here. It might be here, and they just haven't released it yet. But I actually feel that way.
Well, I mean, there is like augmented reality, and there are like very early virtual reality stuff that is actually happening. So who knows what the heck? Yeah, like I said,
there's other worlds going on, and you're open to that, right? I also think that we hit a point where being provocative is so like a norm now. Where back then it was very. They interviewed kids after an Elvis concert, and there were so many ticked off people that his dance moves were provocative.
Oh yeah.
And it was like all the guys were like, that shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't let him dance like that. There's girls here. There's young girls here, and whatever. When I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm saying if you look at what is being done now, like it's almost like out the window. Like, well, you expect that. You expect to see something crazy, someone saying something crazy. Sure. It's been so penetrated already. Yeah.
Well, you need to awaken the senses, right? So you get desensitized to the things that you continue to see. So you got to take it that next step. So yeah, it's only going to get progressively, worse.
Depending on how you see it.
Yeah, depending on how you see it, worse, or let's just say different. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
And I think it's all in prep, like how you prep. Now it's like we know literally anything's possible. Mm-hmm. So when we're coaching or teaching our kids, we're preparing them for the nutty stuff that could possibly happen. Not saying it's good, not saying it's bad. Yeah. Just there's a possibility, X, Y, and Z. So we're protective in a different way now. Mm-hmm. right? I mean, back then you didn't have to steal someone's cell phone from them. You didn't have to take your kid's cell phone from them because you were scared of like a predator.
Yeah.
Right? That's stuff that we have to deal with.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You also gave us problems, right? Every generation gives the following generation an issue. We're not perfect, so we're obviously going to give the next generation an issue. But an issue as in meaning something that we created is going to have some level of like kickback.
Oh, sure.
Just like we're dealing with an interesting part of the world evolving, because it's like you said, half of our childhood was, the outside and then the inside, playing with the new technologies.
Right.
But back then it wasn't computers. It was just video games, and then that was the end of that. Somebody lost, and for us, we just got out and we wanted to be outside anyway. Where now I could see someone being inside and why they would be inside. They're getting completely entertained by this little thing.
Right.
So now we got to change our parenting methods. It's not being mad saying, oh, all you guys do is stay inside. Okay, well, you're also the parent. You're complaining about my generation, but you were also my parent. Yeah. So you created the beast that you're complaining about.
But and to your point too is that the whole thing now too, you can be in your room but still connecting to 20 other people at the same time, and you're through a console or through a computer or whatever.
Exactly. Like I saw a meme. It was by obviously a baby boomer to put up. It was like a bunch of bikes like thrown out on the side or whatever. And there's like, glad I grew up in this era and not this one. Is like a bunch of teens like sitting next to each other on their cell phones or whatever. Mm-hmm. I was like, do you really wish that? Or is that just like kind of like what you're saying? It kind of bothers you that the kids actually might or
having a great
live
time.
more luxury life than you did. Because if we're healthier now, right? They're saying, oh well, no, they were healthier then. They might have ate better stuff, but we're way more conscious and know more about the human body now than it was, even 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we know what we're supposed to do. I'm not saying everyone's executing it, obviously not, but neither did they in the past. Just like back then. If you want to get like all technical on health and stuff, back then you could smoke in the house, right? Yeah. The baby boomers are smoking and blowing smoke in their kids' face. But then they're, and now they put it completely, warnings of tobacco cancer. And we're learning all this stuff about, the causes of all these habits that was done.
Wasn't doctors recommending cigarettes and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, just all kinds of interesting stuff that was in what they were eating, like chemicals and compounds or whatever, that probably wasn't the best. But that's part of the growing process. That's part of the learning process. It's just like the comedian Bill Burr just said the other day. He's like, wow, these doctors are getting really good at plastic surgery. He's like, dude, there's not a wrinkle. There's no crow feet, nothing. He's like, the lady was clearly in her 60s, right? And he said she had a face of a 25-year-old. He's like, remember 20 years ago you could, people were getting their faces all botched. Yeah. And it's true. It's like you could tell someone got work immediately, done. Yeah, like immediately. Now there's like, I don't know, maybe she has really good genes. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever. Right. You know what I mean? But just with that, think about how many surgeries they had to botch before they started. Like now they're like somewhat perfecting, and it's getting kind of exactly. Crazy.
And they can fix those botched ones too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's even the same thing like, glasses. Now we can get laser eye surgery done, right? Which takes a whole 3 minutes, right? Now I don't have to wear like an optical lens where I can get, spend $5,000 and get a surgery really quick, literally 3 minutes. Is that taking away from your thoughts now too?
It's almost like I keep going back to resentful, and this is what I keep coming. They're like resentful that we have options. Right. Like we're afforded options. It's almost looking at like, the kid with no money looking at the kid who, the rich kid. Yeah. Right. You're not mad at him because he has money. You're mad at him because he has options. He has opportunities. And we're the generation of opportunities. Basketball all year round, baseball all year round, clinics for this, camps for that. Back then it was like, you play baseball, you play baseball. Right. It was football season, you play football. Now, I mean, you have art classes, you're afforded so many different opportunities.
There's clubs for everything.
Yeah, you look back at that generation and it was, I don't know, I guess it was pretty basic. I don't know if those opportunities were there. It seems they were.
It was just for a higher class. Now it's like it doesn't matter what class you're in, you can you have these opportunities. Right. And my thing is, it's not even going back. I think it's cool how you grew up. Yep. I thought it was cool. Like my dad was telling me, I was like 8 years old working on a farm. Not saying that that's cool, but I'm saying that's different. Like that's something that I would have, didn't do. Mine was different. We were selling at the flea market at the age of 8. So there's like a different. I was working, I was doing stuff, And that's when it starts to bother me when people start putting on like, the millennials are lazy. I'm like, all right, well, did you live my life to tell me that I'm lazy? Because I'll put if you put me pound for pound, I'll go up against anybody. I'm not going to say I'm going to win every time, but I'll go up against anyone, work-wise. And what my schedule versus your schedule, what we do, how hard you work, or whatever you want to call it, happily. And let's kind of like a fight, a schedule fight. And I'm not talking about busy either, but that's like that. Obviously, that's like a whole other topic. It just drives me crazy because they're saying us basically taking advantage of things like technology as lazy. Yeah. Right. So I don't have to write a letter to a friend, put it in, run it over to the mailman, and let him get it, and the friend will respond a week and a half later or by the time the response, and now I can just send a text and say, "Yo, what's up? Where you at?" And that's what you're calling lazy, or is it someone taking advantage of a technology that was created by you?
Yeah. Well, now it's like a shock if you actually get like a actual letter in the mail.
Yeah, like an actual letter. Yeah.
Somebody actually wrote you something. As opposed to just junk mail and packages.
I mean, even now with texting, I dictate half my stuff. I'm not even actually texting at this point.
Oh, you're just talking to it?
Yeah, I just talk into it, and obviously I have to go back, because some of the stuff it picks up is just it's hysterical.
I hope it comes through okay.
Yeah. Because you're driving. You can't text. No, so my phone has my truck has the Bluetooth thing, so I'm driving and talking, and it's like, you see like my cell phone, like, send.
Even in the fact that you
have everyone knows I'm using it because it comes up some jacked up words, but you obviously know that I'm driving or busy or something.
But wait, what would you like to say to everyone else outside of our generation? If you could impart any wisdom on them, is be open to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you are left in your generation saying, "Oh, that I was the best generation," and you're not growing and learning and evolving with the next generations to follow, you're done. You're stuck.
Yeah,
continue to learn, continue to evolve, because your life will be a lot more fulfilled and happier. You can go back and still remember the old days and enjoy those things, and there's some morals and some principles and all that fun stuff you learned and can take with you. But continue to evolve, continue to grow, because if not, you're gonna be miserable and very resentful.
Yeah, because it's going even faster.
Yeah, I'll say that even feeds into the dad life question too. Is like, what are you instilling in your kids, like that type of attitude and mentality?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that in that sense, because I'm honestly he's going to be teaching me, and it's going to be up to me to try to keep up with him. Yeah. Think about when you first got on AOL. Yeah. Who are you talking to?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my messenger. God. Yeah, when you got AOL, you had your screen name. You'd start talking, and they were like, "How you doing that? Didn't you just have them at school? Like, did you just talk to them?" Now I know kids that are 11 that text all day long to each other. They just saw each other at school. Meanwhile, they'll text all the way to 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good night. He's like, what the heck? 11. So, I mean, they're going to teach me, hopefully. I'm going to have to try to keep up with them, which I'm open to that, and I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't know. For me, I already feel like my son's... Like, I tell him all the time, you're going to be bigger and better. You're going to be bigger and better. I genuinely believe that.
Sure.
And I'm excited for it. And I just think it's just like the common thing. I just think it's a hot topic. Like I said, I think it's a dumb conversation, but I think not that it's a dumb conversation. I think it's good that there's dialogue. I just think the approach is dumb. It's just it's super critical. It's first of all, and it's hypocritical too, because their parents, I'm sure, probably did it to them. Except we have a bigger mouthpiece because of technology, and now we could all see it on the news. We could see it all on our laptops. If you're criticizing the millennials, we just see it more. But I'm sure the generation before criticized the baby boomers, right? I just think we're exposed to it easier. We have an easier reach.
It's more readily available.
I mean, do we understand as millennials, or like I can understand from a baby boomer's perspective, how they had to pay their dues, and we feel like kids coming out of college are expecting to make $75,000 a year. It's like, no, man, there's like steps to this thing, And I feel like that would be annoying as hell to me. Like, oh my God, like this guy thinks he deserves the world. Like, what have you done yet? You just got out of school. Why do you think you are to be given all of this? And I feel like that there is some of that in the millennials. Like, we don't see paying the dues as kind of a passage of a rite of passage, so to speak.
But that might be a consequence of the baby boomers. Part of that too is that they worked for everything, and then they gave it to their children, and then that same out too.
That could be.
So then
when
when they go out now,
I mean, we can't. Something had to have happened where we can't just make that mentality up, right? Something had to happen. That's a learned thing. So it might not be, from school, but it could be, like he's saying, the baby boom is massive when it comes to income and, how much they're worth and how much they make. So if your kid, right, says, Dad, I want a bike, and then 2 days later, you're like, all right, let's wait till Friday. You go to Friday and get your kid a bike. When they were kids, the parents didn't have it like that. You got to think their parents went through the Great Depression. Okay, so they're coming from a different mindset also. Their experience is totally different. We could never get that experience. That's my thing about it. Is like, I can't force me at your experience. That makes no sense. I'm here handling my experience while it's, coming at me. And you're part of the solution. You're also part of the problem, as we all are for everything. But yeah, I wouldn't say everybody's like that, but there is a bigger thing. But that it also plays into like the society we live in, like that microwave society. We want it now, we want it fast, we want it now. Yeah, some kid might come out and is like, yo, I should be making 75 right now. But it's because everything else been coming that fast. So why wouldn't he think he's coming in? They're calling it entitled. No, that's not being entitled. That's what their normal thought process is. So you're going to think, oh, me getting bottled water, oh, I'm entitled to bottled water. Everything's moving that fast. They like to pick the hot topics, like I say. They like to pick like the big items. Oh, he wants to come out of school and make $75K. Well, the kid also wants to go to the gym and get results really fast. So he's taking up all these supplements and all this stuff that they didn't take before or didn't have available to them before. I just think the results are fast for everything. And so I think that goes along with everything. And it's weird because then we get you get kind of put in this weirdo segment that we've been told to, go to school. See, what was implemented on us was an old thought process. Yeah. Instead of it being open, like go to school, see if that's what you like, and then see if you can become something out of that. How about become an entrepreneur? How about going back? There's more entrepreneurs now than there ever was. So who's lazy, right? If there's more people out there making their own business than there ever was before, how's that even lazy? You know what I mean? I just think that term's, tossed around way too much too. But I just think it's like a lack of understanding of how everything's been changing so fast that you can't even grip on one thing because it's a bunch of stuff that you're just like, oh, they're bored with everything. You can never satisfy them. How could you, right? I mean, if you got to think about it, how could you if we're constantly getting thrown new stuff all the time? If you just keep getting new stuff, like, yeah, you're going to get bored with the old stuff.
Yeah. And you can never get used to that thing, so you have to constantly change with that.
Right. And so the whole thing with, like, even school, like, they call it the trap. People say, oh, you got finessed. You paid, whatever, $75,000 for a 4-year degree, without a scholarship. And so then you come out and you're not making, what they promised us. Yeah. You promised us this. You told us to go to school for 4 years. We did it. And then you're mad. Oh, look at them complaining. They're complaining. They're big babies. Oh, no. We followed what you told us to do. You trapped us. You, quote, finessed us. And now you won't let us complain. Now, no, you can't complain. No.
That was the flip side to my argument. They didn't go to school and have, 6-figure debt and, on a $25,000 salary. You know what I mean? They didn't go through that. They didn't start the game of life with their shoes tied.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
That was going to be the flip side to that. I could see where the entitled would be like, man, this kid thinks he's worth this. Where it's like, well, yeah, buddy, you didn't have a mortgage sitting on your back before you even got out of your parents' house.
Right.
So there's also that perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Comparing the two, you could never compare the two. Yeah. That's why it's like you have to come to this level of acceptance and then join it. Right? Like I was like, all right, I have to accept the fact that technology is going to get even crazier. Now I have to join whatever the heck he's going to do. I'm sure this kid's going to teach me more than anyone ever will, come into my life. Right. Just because he's already on the cutting edge, he's learning stuff that I can't keep up with that. His little brain's working better, but I'm going to try my best and laugh. That's why I say, make today an adventure and have fun along the way. That's what my message would be. Because it's going to go even faster. We thought technology was moving, humming in the last 30 years. It's going to go like quadruple or however, how fast
exponential.
Yeah, I'm not, smart enough to give you an IT term. however many gigabytes these things operate at. But I wish Heck was here. He would have said that. But yeah, and I think that's also same thing with the lesson to my kid as I'm, growing up with him. It's like, oh, he needs to grow up. You ever hear that term? Like, your kid needs to grow up. I think adults need to grow up. Yeah. You just need to grow up again, back, and remember what it was like to be in that little brain of yours, and you thought you knew it all, and you didn't. But then at the same time, being open. How many times have you learned something from your kid? You learned a hardcore life lesson from your kid. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're teaching us already. True. As a generation of teachers, I think there's going to be like these wise beings. Because I think we're the ones actually caught in the middle of this, the crossfire, where we got like some old school in us, and we have some we're accepted to the new school, and we're kind of get shot at both ends. They're probably going to be mad at us, and they're mad at us, and we're sitting here like ducks. But we have to manage both. We have to keep everybody happy. How about that? How about that view? If you're looking at it that way, because we know technology, and we also know and like old school. You're just old school, and don't show me nothing old school, the new generation, right? I mean, obviously there's several people, who have old souls and whatever, but I feel like that's where we're at. We're like in the middle. Whoa, hold up now. I'm trying to learn here. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? How did you get that? Yeah. And we're just like, not clueless, but we're just in the middle of this, and then trying to help along the way. I think we're also part of the answer and the healing process. You got to wrap up some things there. And you got to think about the eras, too. When you talk about even just in the United States, they also were growing up in, times of there's still racism, but heavy stuff when it comes to racism. So there's a lot of other factors in their minds where that's why they're so strict. That's why they're so hardcore. That's why they have a not that it's a negative thing. It's just like the very, different. And even when they felt like they maybe tried to be open-minded, they kind of got some backlash, you know what I mean? And it was because of reasons, again, out of their control. And that's why that's why I keep going back that this conversation is dumb in the way I'm saying it. Not in, the whole generation's knuckleheads. When you start putting yourself in those shoes and understanding the baby boomers, understanding why they're saying what they're saying, I get it. But my thing is, don't get hung up there, though. Let's go. Let's keep it moving. Let's go with the young bulls.
You know what, to say that we probably bear the heaviest burden. We're the generation we're the unifying generation, bridging the old with the new, and still being open to whatever comes our way. I mean, that's a pretty heavy burden to try to have parents from that generation and then have kids from the boomlets and so on. Right. So, I mean, we have to be able to, and I think it's cool to be in that position. We're able to go back and then go forward at the same time and still bridge both the two together.
Yeah. I think we're going to look, it's one of those things too, even just the example of schooling. I think we're going to look back and like, holy smokes, you paid what, Dad, for school? Yeah. By the time he's, ready to rock and roll, it might be free or it might be ways around it. Sure. Or that might not even be a necessity.
Yeah, college would be like, do you want the college?
I don't know.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that it changes so fast that might have been a big mistake. You know what I'm saying? For us, it couldn't be because it's working out. But I'm saying I see it going in another direction already. And we're only 10 years out. What's the next 10 years going to look like? You know what I mean? 2027. What in the world is that going to look like? And people are like, oh, you ever see like old like comics? Like, oh, in 2001, the comic strip is like from like 1980. In 2001, there's gonna be astronauts like aliens like walking amongst us. Cars will be flying, and they come up with like all these like crazy.
Or case in point, like the whole Back to the Future thing. Like, the future is like flying cars and highways and all this stuff like doesn't exist now at this point. Right. I mean, not yet. Or even like in the 50s, they thought like we'll be living on the moon or something. Right. And none of that exists yet, but I mean, it's going towards that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean. I don't know. You just don't know. That's the reason why I always say you have to let's understand each other and then work together. And then, we got a whole other generation, 2 more generations to raise. You got to think too, those thoughts and ideas that a baby boomer might be saying, you got to think the ones who are going to really run away with the technology, it's not even us. It's going to be the ones after us, our kids. So those are your grandkids. you got to keep up, right? Because your kids are going to mama and papa's house with tablets and all kinds of stuff, and they're all looking at each other like, what, you can't communicate with your grandkid? Right. Is that how you want to be?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're just blocking a relationship that could be something even grander because you want to say no to new stuff. You're not being open, or you're not being receptive to what's going on, even if you don't like it. Yeah, I don't like all that much technology. I appreciate it, I understand it, but I'm gonna keep going, and learning more. But I'm not like a techie who goes like fanatical about this stuff. But I think it's cool. But I have to be open enough. Like our parents have to be open enough. Like when James goes over, my mom has to know he wants to play on his tablet or whatever. That you have to get beyond of knowing how to turn on and off a TV.
Yeah.
That technology's past that now. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you have to, know the intricacies and you have to go take a class. Some people do. I just think we have to be, there's so many moving parts that you have to be on your toes. What a time to be alive.
Absolutely.
No, it's fascinating because you keep talking about it and you start thinking about like, dang, that's true. What about the grandbabies? Now you're just going to leave them hanging because you're mad about their parents that you raised? What happens if one time you have to then God forbid, raise your grandchildren? Are you just going to walk around moping around complaining about the technology? Like, well, they got to keep up with the curve, what's going on at school or the world.
Just go live in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. In solitude. All right, so to wrap this thing up, what would you do? Since we're speaking of generations, what generation, era, time period would you like to go back if you could, and why?
I would love to be a baby boomer.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's an awesome answer. Why?
I would like to be born in the 50s? No. 55 and be 15 going through the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was able to see all the cars. I was able to see all the civil rights. I was able to take all those life lessons and go into, without the racism, let's take that out of it. If that wasn't a thing. But I would take all those life experiences and then take them to the work world. Take that into the workforce where management was a big deal then. If you got into management, it's like, oh man, you made it. You weren't a line worker. You know what I mean?
Right.
The management or in the office job was a big deal. And I'd like to go there and be that, because they made a decent living. That was before mom and dad. Mom and dad both worked. There was still a mom at home. You could still have a vacation house. It was kind of simpler in my mind. Who knows? It could be the same exact thing if I went back there. But in my mind, that's what it looked like. Yeah. People were coming together. The hippies were cool. I mean, there was music was different. There was cultures coming together. The Beatles were hot. Things were just happening. So living in the 70s, but I'd want to be 15, and I'd want to live through that whole decade in kind of the prime of your life, young, energetic, open to things, because things were happening. So that I would like to be a baby boomer, born in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I don't know. I guess it's, generation would be a little bit more. I don't know what they would have called, but somewhere between like 1920 and like 1935, like that 15 years there. Just because there's so much going on between even just like solidifying, who or what America even was when it came to like, the industrial age and all that stuff. Yeah. But even just like all these people, like a lot of people, like immigrants coming in to, States, like literally in their mind, like if I could just step foot on this piece of land, I made it, to the free world. And just like go and just seeing people, like that excitement, I guess whether it was a good experience or a bad one, I would just like take it all in. I want to take in the bad too, though. I want to see, like the original, like the old school gangsters and that whole thing. How they got away with stuff without cameras and without cars driving by. Well, you would have cars driving by, not the kind of cars we have now driving by. And just like feeling the struggle and actually just sitting there, but then seeing people trying to go through it and make it a better experience. Yeah. Whether it was bad, like being in a gang, or whether it was good, starting your own like shoe repair business, right? Like some old school business like that. Like that is classic. And a lot of, it was a business era. And obviously, the Great Depression, but you had like the roaring 20s in there in that time frame also. Just a lot of cool prohibition, a lot of cool stuff. And on my mind, I don't mean it like oh, it's cool because I didn't have to experience it, and I just like the the theory of it all, or the glamour of it all, I should say. But I would want to experience that struggle just to see, and I'm like, my gosh, like the technology is nothing, right? Basically, it's simmered down to basically nothing. I mean, you think you got like a couple of light bulbs, and that's it's close
maybe
to
running water, maybe.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of stuff. Like I said, like, what are we eating today? I gotta run to the market. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, just a basic thing.
What's
like
the
that.
butcher have for meat? And you're like, I only got this. And you're like, that's what we're having. Beef tips. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think I would probably be something like in like this, like working on Wall Street or something. It would definitely be like, I picture New York in my mind. Always had picture New York or Philadelphia, somewhere, but it's all close in vicinity. Probably take 4 hours. Like, how long would it take to get there on horse? You know what I mean? From here. It's like stuff anyway, that's why. I think it's very cool, but I would want to taste the struggle as well. Because there's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to racism, when it comes to immigrants and business and technology. It's just everything. That's wild. But anyone else?
Well, I was thinking, what kind of Manny kind of mentioned earlier was like when they had like the era of like the space race and all that stuff, what was like that was such like a Kickstarter of advancement of technology that kind of
the 60s
to kind of like really kind of lead up until, because people like America was just like in the need to like be the best, so they really kickstarted advancing technology to get to the point of actually making it to the moon and all that stuff.
A lot of stuff happened for the baby boomers.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they're so like coarse about everything and so like black and white about it. It's like, you don't know what it's like. Yeah. You know what? You're right. I don't.
Yeah. But, I mean, I still think the argument goes the other way.
Sure. Goes both ways, no doubt.
Goose, did you?
No, just me, just in the same thing like you said, in the 20s. Just because, I kind of go with, just with my passion of cutting hair. That era, the time frame, like, barbers got suited and booted to cut hair, and the guys that were going into Wall Street came in suits and ties to get their hair cut and get their shoes polished. And, like, so for me, that time and era in my industry that I'm in now, I would love to experience it.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know, it was, I don't think the hairstyles then, too, were very simple, but it was just, like, use, the greasers and stuff like that. They was just, as opposed to now, there's so many different styles, and everyone has, like, their own different, like, personality. Right. Mostly everyone you walk down the street, their hair was either slicked back or parted back in the day. Right. Sure. And it was like either if your hair was parted, you were meaning like a businessman. Right. So, and then obviously it just, like that whole, I don't want to go through like the whole like that time of everything when everything like downfall, but, and then I guess that's when barbering kind of became barbering. Because before that, barbers were like almost like a doctor kind of. You would get like a surgeon, and then that's when barbers became their own thing, and men got together, and then after that, kind of everything. I don't know. I feel like that whole industry fell down, like from like the 70s, like the hipsters, where Manny wants
that's right.
The long hair and curly and stuff. So that whole the 70s and 80s, the barbering kind of fell out, and then that's when.
Now thinking about it, hairstyle was terrible back then.
Yeah.
I guess there wasn't. That was their style, right?
They were hippies and they weren't taking baths. That's probably why.
Yes. That's good.
Absolutely. I feel like every doesn't matter. Every generation has the pros and the cons.
Sure.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Millennials. We're gonna wrap this episode up with 2 quotes. The first quote is by Audie Cornish. It seems like the millennial generation is a little bit of a cultural punching bag. And the second quote is by Kabir Sehgal. Gone is the day where you work at a job for 30 years and retire. Millennials jump around and switch careers. I think it's important for CEOs to highlight career mobility within a company so that employees don't get bored and continue to be stimulated. So he's talking about basically role transitions within the same corporation and having, getting people experience on each thing. It's interesting being even myself being a manager, having to know every role that your department has, each staff member. And that is very interesting to me because it's, like I said, that's how my mind operates anyway. Just seeing Loda every day is like, it's fascinating. So, and I think that everyone should on some level experience that. And then you could actually appreciate how each individual role kind of helps, for obviously the greater good, so to speak.
Yeah, it makes you understand the big picture at all times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Millennials. In this episode, the crew dives into an array of interesting hot topics. We discuss being a millennial, technology, education, and society. We talk about how we grew up, our views, and our overall approach on life as a millennial. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Audie Cornish and Kabir Sehgal. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyLeeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyLeeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.